Hi, everybody. I'm Joni Cooper, the Director of Programming for the DocLands Documentary Film Festival, celebrating documentary film with you this year in what I'm finding to be quite an intimate virtual space, and have actually found it surprisingly delightful. I hope you've experienced some of the same. I know it's different. Thank you for joining us for our 2020 DocLands Honors Award presentation to a filmmaker whom we recognize for exceptional storytelling within the documentary genre, an artist whose films resonate universally, emphasizing our common humanity no matter the subject. This year, we're incredibly honored to celebrate the work of two-time Emmy Award winner, five-time Oscar nominee, and Oscar Award winner, Freida Lee Mock. Before we present the award and kick off this conversation, let's take a glimpse of a few highlights from Freida's prolific career thus far.
My older brother had a report due on birds, but he couldn't start it because there was just too much material. And my dad put his arm around him and said, just take it bird by bird. I was going to give a talk on everything that I've learned since last year about writing. It turned out I'd only learned 2 more things. Probably the most important thing I can tell you is that if you're working on a novel and there's a therapist in the novel, you should probably go ahead and take the therapist out. In something like 95% of cases, a book will suddenly spring into being from the no of all nothingness if you take the therapist out. I used to not be able to work if there were dishes in the sink. Then I had a child. And now I could work if there was a corpse in the sink, you know.
Designing the piece, I knew that I had to ask myself, what is a memorial's purpose? Especially, what is a memorial's purpose in the 20th century? And all I was saying in this piece is the cost of war is these individuals, and we have to remember them first. And so it's really the people, not the politics, which is what this piece is about. Because it's only when you accept the pain, it's only when you accept the death, can you then come away from it, can you then overcome it. And literally, as you read a name or touch a name, and the pain will come out. And I really did mean for people to cry. That you can then have to, of your own power, turn around and walk back up into the light, into the present. But if you can't accept death, you'll never get over it. So what the memorial is about honesty, which is also what the civil rights piece is about. You have to accept and admit that this pain has occurred in order for it to be healed, in order for it to be cathartic.
Guys on the same day, it's incredible.
What difference does it make whether you find one name?
I know.
Look at all of them good names.
I know. No, but some of them are special to you. Some of them are special to you. Others are special to other people.
This is a portrait of Maya Lin, designer, architect, and sculptor, that looks at a decade of her work and its impact. It is a story about artistic vision and creativity, and a journey into our country's history, beginning with her design of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial.
There's nothing really like it. There isn't anything really like it at all. It doesn't make any specific gesture which can date it in time or in place. It's all wars, all death, all living and all dead at once. It's a remarkable thing, and done by a girl of 20 or whatever. It's really unbelievable. It's really hard to grasp.
I loved operating in another medium with the verve and acrobatism, which is associated with ballet and flying trapezes and things like that, and being able to do what I wanted in the air with this big, heavy machine, which could exercise an extension of my will.
We're control freaks, and sitting in that cockpit, you know, you have 40,000 pounds of thrust under your left hand and about 6 or 7 G's under your right hand. And so maybe that's it, control. But then, you know, there's some really beautiful moments of flying too. And, you know, I have in my memory landing on aircraft carriers just as the sun's coming up.
The phrase we use is pushing the envelope. Early on in pilot training, they tell you what to do, where to move the stick, but over a period of years, and I didn't have too many years because I ended up in North Vietnam, but you begin to play it like a violin. You know just where to go and how far to go, and that's all there is in the airplane. Don't do anything else, it's dangerous.
These shear forces acting between successive layers of the velocity, but it's pressure and friction, basically. Okay, what's the sum of the forces in this case?
I read an article in National Geographic about this great new college out in Colorado, and it looked beautiful, and they had a great curriculum. And oh, by the way, if you graduate from that place, you get to go fly airplanes, and it just sounded wonderful to me as a little guy on a farm in North Carolina who wanted to fly airplanes.
All right. Everybody in? Looks like we'll need to grab some chairs today. Well, let's see. I think over here is probably great. Okay, just all centered around that way. Great. Okay, everybody in good health today? Good. Very nice. Not dull. Here we go. Oh, you're gonna do the ending too? Okay. Can I have you thinking of how hungry you might be? There you go. Good job.
Hello. How are you? Okay. I just want to tell you the other day it was so wonderful. It was exactly a tempo with all the excitement, with all the, you know, the wonderful happiness of Christmas time, you know, and I was amazed because, you know, I mean, it's not so easy with the distance, but we were exactly so musical. But it's really wonderful, really wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Have you done your rehearsal? Ecco giocattolo di Parpignol, salami. marzo c'è una dama. Bravo, that's beautiful. Yeah. And you sound so secure and so beautiful.
Thank you.
So let's do it full of confidence, okay? Okay, so let's have a great performance, okay? It's beautiful. Thank you very much. Thank you. See you. Have a good one.
That's a really unique and rare opportunity to be conducted by Maestro so personally. So enjoy that. Keep that in your memory for all your lives, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Guess what? It's time for costumes. Okay, so let's head on down. We'll wait for another.
I gave my father Millennium when I had finished it because he's got a tremendous ear for the music of language, and I wanted to know what he thought because it was a huge, clunky thing, I thought. He said, "This is a very ugly play, but it's a very, very good play." And it was a moment where the transformation that happened in my relationship with him began, and it happened through Angels.
Children of the new morning, criminal minds, selfish and greedy and loveless and blind. Reagan's children.
It's a very political play. It's very much about the late 80s. It's got full of incredibly nasty things about Ronald Reagan and Republicans.
You have AIDS.
Your problem, Henry, is that you're hung up on words, on labels. You believe they mean what they seem to mean. AIDS, homosexual, gay, lesbian. You think these are names that tell you who someone sleeps with, huh? But they don't tell you that.
No.
No, like all labels, they tell you one thing and one thing only. Where does an individual so identified fit in the food chain and the pecking order?
Like the character of Roy Cohn, he liked Harper.
Things get to me, Joe stays away, and now, well, look, my dreams are talking back to me.
What if I walked out on this? Would you hate me forever?
The play is enormous. It's 7 hours long. It addresses questions of hope and despair, questions of citizenship, questions about death and loss, and it's a play about AIDS.
G-Dog, what's up, G?
He's just that gangster for God and stuff, you know what I'm saying? And G or G-Dog just kind of fit him better, you know, because he truly is a homeboy, you know? When you have a homie like that, then you kind of really see what a homeboy's all about, you know?
Recognized as one of the preeminent experts on gang life. He's a distinguished author whose latest book, Tattoos on the Heart, is available. I present to you the founder and executive director of Homeboy Industries, Father Gregory Boyle.
It's a great privilege to be with you. You know, somebody asked me, what would you do if you weren't a priest? I said, I'd be a public defender. So there's a common vision that unites us together. It's a vision of wanting to, in the end, create a community of kinship such that God, in fact, might recognize it. Now we're the largest gang intervention program in the US of A, with folks walking through our doors from every corner of the county. And so now we have 5 businesses: Homeboy Bakery, Homeboy Silkscreen, Homeboy Homegirl Merchandise, the Homeboy Solar Panel Training, and Homegirl Cafe, where women with records, young ladies from rival gangs, waitresses with attitude will gladly take your order. About 2 months ago, Diane Keaton, the Oscar-winning movie star and actress, came to Homegirl Cafe, and her waitress was Glinda. Now, Glinda had been to prison, tattooed, been there, done that. She doesn't know who Diane Keaton is. She's taken her order, and Diane Keaton says, well, what do you recommend? You know, what are your favorite dishes? And Glinda rattles off what she likes. Then something dawns on Glinda. She looks at Diane Keaton, she goes, wait a minute. Where have I seen you before? You look so familiar to me. I feel like I know you. And Diane Keaton very humbly kind of deflects it. Oh gosh, I don't know, I suppose I have one of those faces that people think they've seen before. And then Glenda goes, no, now I know, we were locked up together.
This is where I got the voicemail message from Jenny Thomas, but it was still quite shocking to come and actually sit at my desk and be at the phone and hear this voice. You know, I frankly thought this has got to be somebody impersonating her. But either way, I thought whether it's her or someone impersonating her, this is an important call. After all, I thought, you know, if this is someone really trying to get a witness to change her sworn testimony, we ought to know about it and we ought to know who's doing it.
And I am very proud indeed to nominate him for this position, and I trust that the Senate will confirm this able man promptly.
I expected to be part of the vetting process. When I heard about the nomination, it was the summertime. It was a typical hot summer in Oklahoma. School session was out. The FBI and the background checks are very extensive. You know, anybody and everybody, especially who's ever worked with a person, will get a call. And that's what I expected to happen. Once I got the call, specifically directed at me from the Senate itself, once that call came, I knew what I had to do. We understand that you experienced sexual harassment at the hands of Clarence Thomas. That was when I answered, more specifically about the behavior. Pressuring for dates, the sex talk in the workplace, the feeling that my job was really in jeopardy. But that was also when I said, you know, I really would like to have a chance to do a statement in my own words. I don't want this to be a political witch hunt. And I sent it in believing that it would be confidential, but believing that the senators would take it into account. I suspected that there would be other women and that they needed to really fully investigate it and not just rely on my statement. And so I sent it in with my name, and it was leaked.
Good evening. From Congress to the White House to the workplace, the sexual harassment storm around Clarence Thomas is intensifying. The battle over his Supreme Court nomination has now triggered a nationwide debate about sexual harassment on the job.
Those are fantastic. Welcome, Freida Lee Mock. Thank you so much for being here to give us an opportunity to celebrate and honor your work.
Thank you so much, Joni. It's great to be here and to talk with you and whoever else is watching. Thanks so much for all the work we've done to set up this incredible virtual festival. Thank you for the spotlight today and for those nice words.
Or as you like to say, the hot seat. Director-producer James Hall has called Freida a premier cinematic portrait artist, a label that she has certainly earned with work that is deeply rooted in truth. And I am thrilled to present the 2020 DocLands Honors Award to you, Freida, for your determination in bringing to light intimate yet powerful cinematic biographies that allow us to experience extraordinary lives of some of the most remarkable American artists, politicians, humanitarians, and social justice activists. And
thank you, I accept delightfully this gorgeous honor and this beautiful piece of art that DocLands has created. I'm just really happy to be here with you and feel like it's a lot of fun and a little nervous making, actually. Actually, just looking at the work, you think it's a hold up, you look at that then and now, and a lot of things flash through one's head. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I just wanted to let you know, too, that this glass vessel is not virtual. You will be receiving it pretty soon. So hold on. I promise you'll get it. I also just wanted to note that if you're streaming us live from your computer, you'll see a box to the right of your viewing window where you can insert your questions. Please feel free to submit questions as they arise, and we'll attempt to answer as many as we can throughout the conversation. Unfortunately, Apple TV, Roku, and the other apps don't contain this ability. So if you're streaming from your computer, you're fine. Now, you may have noticed that the trailer for Freida's new film, RUTH, Justice Ginsburg in Her Own Words, was not included in the reel. We'll take a look at that later. But Freida, I want to tell you how much I appreciate your film about one of our truest real-life heroes.
Well, it was a privilege and an amazing experience to have the opportunity to make this film. Ruth, Justice Ginsburg in Her Own Words. And this is because some incredible executive producers had the idea that we need to honor this remarkable person. And so Regina Scully, I'd like to mention, Darren Dreyfus, Barbara Dobkin, and Sandra Lee, among 6 wonderful executive producers, came to me and said, would you do this film? So that was a great way to start a journey of discovering the nuances and the details of this amazing human being and scholar and judge and justice and litigator, like I said, in her early lives, both as a litigator and as a teacher. All these talents she had, I think, combined to make her work as a justice so clear, impactful, and enduring. So thank you for running the film. And it's a kind of a maiden voyage because we finished it not too long ago. And this is a virtual festival, the first virtual festival we've been in. And it means many people will be able to see it beyond going to the beautiful Mill Valley. That would have been the place. So thank you.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, you're very welcome. And, although the news of RBG's passing shouldn't have been a surprise, it really was. I think the news certainly gutted me, and I don't think I'm the only woman to feel that way, obviously. And we know that RBG was holding on with her Herculean strength to see us through. But now she truly deserves to rest peacefully while we take it from here.
Yes. Well, I think we all, because she has been so able to leap over obstacles, but which, could have been legal and society in terms of, being a woman and a mother and trying to make her way professionally into the world, after law school, that there were those sort of obstacles, but somehow, and even with her health challenges, we seem to see her just being able to go forward without much complaint. So it was, people would come to me and say, or would say to me, well, I'm worried. I said, no, I think she's on to her 18th life. She's had 9 lives. She's on to the next 9, and that she'll just keep going. And so it was very profound when she passed, on September 18th. It was just stopped all of us in our tracks and really created a moment and a time today of really looking at what a giant of a person and a justice she is. So hopefully the film will kind of fill in all those aspects about her gifts to us.
Well, we're certainly honored to be able to include the special preview of your film. And, you know, it's no exception to the remarkable biographies you've already given us. So thank you. I did want to ask how you decided on the structure for Ruth, Justice Ginsburg, in her own words, because you must have had so much footage to choose from. And I know that it's often difficult to wade through so much information.
Yes, well, actually, when as a storyteller filmmaker, I find it very important to figure out what the story is and how are you going to tell that story. And so my start is generally to take a big picture approach and look at both primary sources and secondary sources and read a lot of material and then look at and then think what this story might be, and then think visually about what this story can be. But because she had lived this amazing long life, we started to think how much footage has been shown about, how much footage is there about her that might be the building blocks of the visual story. So there was a very long period of research and development in terms of both, literary material as well as visual material. And that shaped pretty much how the story would be told. And what I really loved seeing was that I loved actually hearing her own voice at a time that we have not heard her of, because most of us who have become fans of RBG, the icon, really came upon her only in the last 7 years. It was in the year 2013, that the law student, Shauna Kizniak, my pronunciation, started the Tumblr, RBG, in the spirit of BIG. And so for the public, I think, unless you were a gifted law student and a court watcher, you may not have known how brilliant she was, and discovered her for many of the public, I think, when the Tumblr happened. So I realized in looking at all this material, it was amazing to see her speak in her 40s with the ideas that you see her articulating in her 80s. And it was the decision, after seeing all this material in her 40s and 50s and 60s, I felt that it would be really powerful to have a film that really sculpted her core ideas in her own words. So that's the kind of the you might say the approach was to let her own words of that period lead the development of the storyline. And then eventually everyone who you see in the film who talk about her, the clerk, the volunteer in New York, Columbia law student, the friend who worked with her, Kathleen Paratas, attorney, was with her at ACLU in the 70s, a witness to how she strategized and became the architect of the women's rights movement, constitutionally. All of this began to shape how I thought this film story might be told. Okay. Now, in terms of structure, as you can see, her seminal work, and the reason I think President Clinton said this is the justice, this is the person I believe. I didn't use his exact words, but he was struck by her after he met her, and Dowley realized that she was the architect of the important gender upturning the gender discrimination laws of the 70s and basically honoring the gender equality. That I felt that one had to understand the early period. And the question I had was, how am I going to tell that story? Well, I ran across this amazing footage of the Indiana, fifth graders visiting her in her chambers, and the teachers were incredible that they prepped these kids, these public school kids, to ask the most intelligent questions about constitutional law, that became, and it was a discovery. That's how I'm going to tell it. I'm going to have it told through the questions of the students and then animated in a way or illustrated these very complex constitutional issues. So the idea of using illustration and animation was an important decision, I feel, because I scratched my head. How were we to explain these somewhat complex constitutional issues and briefs? And I'm pleased to say that attorneys who've seen the film actually single out the animation. They particularly point out how they felt that the cases were really well done, and I was very pleased about that. And I felt they wished they had that animator, with them while they were litigating a case in a trial. So yeah. I hope that answers some, but I think fundamentally for any filmmakers watching this is that, at least for me, that they putting before filming and before visualizing, I think for me it's very important to understand intellectually what the story is, and then to figure out what are the core ideas that need to be told. I do believe a film can only do so much, 90 minutes, 2 hours. We can't tell everything, and that hopefully a film will inspire you to go on and you read court cases, or just start reading more about an idea or a person. So that's how that project happened, with great support from executive producers, and I had an incredible team of people working on the film. So yeah,
that's fantastic. And now, sort of in retrospect, having the film in her own words, it just seems so much more valuable ever because of her passing. And now you've made the film. We've got her words right there in front of us. So kudos.
Yes, thank you. I really love seeing her. As you know, the film opened almost with her talking to you, and she's beautiful. Her spirit is beautiful, but her ideas about, in this case, it was relating to the ERA amendment, the Equal Rights Amendment back then in the 70s, which was vital, and then it was killed. It didn't pass, constitutionally. But you can just to see how she speaks and how consistent, in one sense. Why not? That her ideas were very well formed.
And that tremendous foundation that she's built through that gentle but steadfast way, and also, much to the dismay of her adversaries, in her almost always winningly logical arguments. She's amazing.
Absolutely. Incredibly strategic, and also very, she has a laser, her mind. She was very, very deliberate and doing what she felt was effective. And particularly, as you see in the film, she was facing 9 men who were raised or products of their time, and so she, as you know, picked very carefully which cases to bring before the court. And as we know, strategically, she was delighted whenever there was a plaintiff who was a man, which helped the justices perhaps to identify or be curious about why a man might want to stay home and take care of his child because the mother sadly had passed away at childbirth. That there was strategically having a male plaintiff, was sort of made them perhaps sit up in their chairs and really interrogate themselves about their own maybe biases.
Yeah. Now, before we get into more specifics about some of the films, I just wanted to look back at how, how your documentary career started. Like, what spurred you on initially away from your academic life at UC Berkeley, where you were doing graduate work in law and history, and then you moved into documentary filmmaking? Was it a particular person or cause, or did Berkeley and its community influence your decision at all?
Well, actually, it's, you always ask the origin story. How did it happen? It was really kind of prosaic. I mean, actually, I just woke up one day and said, I want to make documentary films. And then to deconstruct, well, why and how did that happen? I mean, literally, I woke up and said, I want to do that. I mean, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I went to college. I majored in history and English, minored in English, and I thought I'd go to law school. I tried, I didn't like it. Just, I knew I tried briefly and I didn't like it. It wasn't for me. And I taught high school for a short time, and that was the hardest job I ever had. And then one day I woke up and I was just like, I'm going to make documentary films. It was as simple as that. But I think it probably goes back to what I studied. What the period I loved in studying history at Berkeley was the progressive era, where muckraking, writers like Lewis and the Octopus. I mean, the muckrakers were exposing corruption and all that. And so I just love that period. And I felt maybe documentary films would be the vehicle to do that. So it goes back to perhaps Berkeley days. But film was never something on, anything in my background. My parents are immigrants, and that was not what you do. I was able to explain to my mom and dad actually what I did. As long as I didn't embarrass them, I think it was okay to do what everyone does. Okay, because as you know, as being especially Chinese, the idea of saving face is very important, and you kind of grow up thinking, oh, as kids, as American kids, right? First generation, you sort of laugh, but then that is something that you perhaps feel, growing up. That, well, I think all parents don't want to be embarrassed by their kids, whatever the culture. So anyway, I just jumped in the field, and I got a job working at Wolper Productions, and I just ran with it, so to speak. So that's how I got into it. So when people are looking at this, or I do get questions, what should I do? I find that what's worked for me, and particularly also choosing stories or landing on stories, is that instinct about who you are, what drives you. That's sort of there's something truth in that. That's the cleanest, I think, the purest way of saying there's something unmediated about that feeling, whether it's a subject or a story or a career. Going with one's unmediated instinct has worked okay for me in terms of not only choosing stories, but also following the yellow brick road to my work as a filmmaker.
Yeah. Now, speaking of choosing stories, how do you decide on your subjects, the stories that you go to? Do the stories come to you, or do you go to the stories, or is it a mix?
Well, it's a mix. I'm really thrilled when someone says, "Would you do this film, this story?" As certainly the story of Ruth in her own words, the Justice Ginsburg in her own words. That came to me, and the film Return with Honor, about POWs, about American pilots surviving as POWs in North Vietnam, also was brought to me, and that followed Maya Lin. I guess they basically were graduates of the Air Force Academy who saw Maya Lin, and I got a call asking if I'd like to do a film about fighter pilots. And I said, well, I don't know anything about fighter pilots, but it sounds interesting. So half the work and what we showed today, I looked at it and said, oh my goodness, most of those are blank pieces of paper, and I just ran with it. So as an example, in the case of G-Dog, I happened to just read a little synopsis of a new book coming out, Tattoos in the Heart, which became a New York Times bestseller, but it hadn't come out. There was a blurb because he was going to speak at a community event. And it just struck my eye, not only the title, Tattoos in the Heart, but it said Jesuit priests, gangs, and unconditional love. It was as simple as that. And that spoke to me. A case of Tony Kushner, Wrestling with Angels. I had read that he was just opening a play in Soho about Afghanistan, Kabul, Homebody Kabul. And I had been in Afghanistan in my 20s, and I thought, oh, what's this about? So it was as simple and as frightening. I say to myself, when I look back, how do I get into these situations? It's really 2 or 3 ideas that spark an interest in me, and I mean in terms of that's how I get started. Pick and choose. It's I know I saw Annie Lamott, who's beloved, as you know, in the Bay Area as a writer, and I saw her at a writers' conference, and she was just so funny. I just thought, and she's very political, and she's a cranky Christian, a radical, she's an activist, she's all these mixes of things. And I just found her interesting and funny. So it started with that kind of simple reaction to this person. So I don't usually think about this, but when these kinds of things happen, when I get these spotlight experiences, I have to kind of think of how did that happen? And it really, it's a very simple idea that strikes me. And later on in the process, whether it's 1.5 years or 5 years, in the case of Maya Lin, which also started off as a light bulb idea. As an example, in that case, when I read that she was doing a second memorial, which she said was going to be her last, the Civil Rights Memorial, I said, war and race. These are 2 big ideas, but she expresses them in 3-dimensional form, like the Vietnam Memorial, and she was going to do this in Montgomery, Alabama with the Civil Rights Memorial. So I thought, that would be simple. We'll just do a film about war and race, using an artist to see how a artist's sculpture expresses these ideas. So that was it, simple. But then, I thought it'd be over in 1.5 years. It went 5 years, because what happens is most, I think, documentary filmmakers who start a project, very little, sort of newsy, superficial things. And then once the person says, yes, you can go on this journey with me, then you begin to read and find out a greater breadth and depth. So in the Maya's case, it was pretty interesting that she's not unlike, her projects are not unlike a filmmaker in that it takes 2 to 5 years to get to finish a project. And when I met her, she said, when she was finishing the Civil Rights Memorial, I said, what else are you doing? Well, she ended up doing, from the film, it's very huge in that she was dealing, and what I find particularly interesting in the story is that everything you see in Maya Lin, she designed and created conceptually before she turned 30. So the stories she did, her sculpture were about war, race, peace, and ecology. War, race, peace, women, and ecology. So the 5 big isms of our time, are expressed in her work. So it became longer and more deep as a story. And I think it served the story well. But I said after that, no more 5-year projects. I'll never do that. I just want to see. So.
But Freida, looking at Maya Lin, she is such an amazing, compelling character. Of course you couldn't stop. And the title of the film is so perfect because throughout she has a strong, clear vision and she makes it happen, and she's just so succinct in laying it out and does not compromise at all. So I am so glad you stuck with her for 5 years.
Well, I am too, but I must say, after 5 years, I said, that was, I had to recover, but I've done not quite as long, but some have gone 2 or 3 years. So the return with honor was fast in that, because if you're an independent filmmaker, oftentimes you're spending half the time raising money. So it's a combination of all these different hats you're wearing to make it all happen and make it to the finish line. But when someone comes to you and commission or says, will you do this? Oftentimes they're the ones who have to do to bring the funding. And your obligation is to simply, figure out how to make this film work and come alive and hopefully soar. So that, for various reasons too, the POWs are going to celebrate their 25th anniversary. I think it was the year we were at your festival, the 25th anniversary of Homecoming. So there was a deadline that they wanted. And so therefore we were able to do it because, we didn't have to fundraise, and there was enough means to put on a big group of people to help film all over the United States and in Vietnam. So it was a great project and an eye opener in terms of how you survive, with dignity. Yeah. That was their word. Returning with honor was a beautiful idea, and that sustained them in a really dark time.
Yeah. And that would have been 1998. I remember when we were at Mill Valley together.
Yeah, and what I love about that screening, because you do have outreach with junior high and high school, and I remember that you brought in about 500 students, and I was just struck by the teachers. At one point, they said, "I can't believe it. No one's going to the bathroom." The kids were so transfixed by the story of how these, big, fighter pilots, the peacocks of the sky were who were caught, and how are they going to get out of this very difficult situation, which included torture and deprivation and all that. And the kids did not leave the screening. And that actually, since that time, the film has been used in schools, since it ran its theatrical life. And I've received letters from kids, from teachers who say, when they run that film, all of a sudden the kids are quiet and they thank the teachers afterwards, because they're riveted by that story. Yeah, it's a universal story of surviving with dignity.
I also find it really interesting that so much of your work turns out to be as relevant today as it was when you made the films. Has this been surprising to you, or maybe I should say disappointing in some ways?
I don't really think about it, but when you ask a question, and I think, well, what makes it relevant? And I think maybe what excites me when I do a story is sort of the universality about a specific idea, about a specific situation, and usually there's a big idea behind the specifics. So let's say G-Dog trying to give these, kids a second chance, kids who are products of broken homes and poor health, poverty, etc. And with a role model of, adults going into the prison system, that these kids really had no chance, coming into this world with that kind of adult population, in a sense. And while it deals with a specific, it's a universal story, really, of how do you raise, what is the community's responsibility? And in this case, it's really, I find the story puts a human face on understanding kids at risk. People label them as, gang members, but the ones who come through that door at Homeboy, have made a decision, I want to change my life. And that place, Homeboy, offers a second chance, a safety net for you to reimagine your life and be able to become a contributing member of the community, raise and have a family and a positive impact on society. But it's specific to the community in LA, but it's a universal story of how do you walk with the most marginalized in our communities, demonized as the way dear Father Boyle describes the obligation he feels, both as a citizen, a person, and a Jesuit, that you walk with the most demonized. So there's something universal that we can all relate to in terms of a nation and a country and a community, because what he has done, Father Boyle, is look to, for example, around the world, they have a global network of Homeboy where people learn from that example. He's very sweet. In fact, there's a moment Kamala Harris, when she was Attorney General of California, visited. Everybody must visit Homeboy who's doing pro-social work. So the mayor comes in. I remember seeing Mrs. Jobs come through with her team. It's a place that you want to learn from, and it's a place of great hope. You feel just great when you visit and when you leave. But she asked him, what about replicating this project? This process is so successful in LA. And his response was, we don't want to be the McDonald's of, gang rehabilitation, but that it's important for others to take from our model what suits their particular circumstances. And so out of that one place in Boyle Heights has grown this global network on gang on second chances, and it's called the Homeboy Global Network. And so the people, it's a franchise, but specific to your circumstances. In Scotland, I know Scotland's been, this police chief contacted me from Scotland, asked me if he could run the film. They're just, it's people have to deal with these social issues, of gangs, kids at risk.
Yeah.
So yeah. So the universality. Thank you. I'm happy that it does strike you, because that's what kind of excites me when there's.
Yeah. Well, and with so many of the films, like even if you're looking at Wrestling with Angels with Tony Kushner, I watched that again, and Tony Kushner says, and this is what really struck me, was he says, an ethical obligation, we all have an ethical obligation to look for hope. It's an ethical obligation not to despair if you can possibly not despair. And I just thought, wow.
Wow, exactly. In fact, I think maybe we can. I love that, what he says to these young people, and it's easy to become, disenchanted. But I loved what he said there, and it really applies to us now. Yeah, it is an ethical obligation to look for hope. It's an ethical obligation not to despair. Yeah.
And even when you look at, I loved also what Oscar Eustis was talking about, Tony Kushner's good friend, about theater and democracy. He said that they were invented in the same place and in the same decade. That's theater and democracy. When two actors talk to each other, at that moment, a different emotion is demanded from the audience. It's the emotion of empathy. The same emotion that is required for theater to work is the emotion that is required for democracy to work. The idea that we care about each other's experience.
You're perfect. Great. The film did have an impact, and that's, I think, as a filmmaker, you hope that there's some resonance. And I love that Oscar Eustis' comment so well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And just talking about, that he says the way Chekhov used to talk about Tolstoy, as long as Tolstoy exists. He's like a gravitational force that keeps the rest of us honest because we look at that example, and that's what the theater is capable. And he's doing with moral clarity, Tony is doing with moral clarity, intellectual vigor, and a pure joy of creating that is exhilarating.
You're verbatim perfect. Joni, that's exactly when you're talking about Tony. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And even, going back to Anita Hill a little bit, she's just been in the news recently, this month actually, because Anita, in the wake of the Me Too movement, was named chair of the Hollywood Commission on Eliminating Sexual Harassment and Advancing Equity Now. And just this month, they're launching a new platform that will help identify repeat offenders of sexual harassment. And this is something that she hopes will be used by major network studios and companies in the entertainment industry. So, she's gone from being, I would never say she was a real victim, because she really did speak truth to power. But she continues her work.
Exactly, and I'm so pleased that on a personal level for her family, the film was important to bring understanding to what they went through, and to kind of bookend that how Anita and her family, therefore, by being close, felt the intimidation after the hearings, and all the the misunderstandings from the hearings were such that one of the motivations for me to do this film 20 years after the hearings, to try to understand actually what happened. I think I, like many people watching that hearing, didn't quite understand what was going on, and how much it was politicized. It was politicized, and that the family was extremely pleased that a film could kind of give some understanding to what that experience was for them. But that going forward, and especially with the hashtag movement, the hashtag Me Too movement, before that, there was, looking at the film after that, I felt there's no question. I think before hashtag Me Too, people took sides, who to believe. There was no question after that. And to see Anita so celebrated and put in positions of importance of leadership in this whole area of sexual harassment is just wonderful to see. And it keeps getting better. It keeps growing.
Yeah, but it's also interesting that 3 decades after Clarence Thomas was confirmed to the Supreme Court, we're kind of in the same kind of situation with a replacement for our RBG. And so here you've got 2 of your subjects, Anita Hill and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, sort of overlapping in a situation right now, right here today.
Yes, and it just, if we believe what's going to happen, they replaced, Thurgood Marshall with an African American, but politically it was diametrically on the opposite side. So in the same way with Justice Ginsburg, yes, they're replacing it with a woman justice potentially, and potentially on opposite sides of a political scale.
Yeah.
Yes, so it's politics. Yeah. That's why every vote counts. Very important to vote. The Supreme Court matters in people's lives deeply. What they do go to the most fundamental aspects of our life, education, healthcare, family life. It matters that we pay attention to who our leaders are, and to vote with intelligence.
That's for sure. What do you think was your most challenging project? For whatever reason.
For whatever. Well, Maya went so long, you know, that I think once I commit to a project, I just stay with it, you know, but having to remember all that stuff, I said to myself, you know, the voiceover, you know, what you know, the sound bites or the music cues, I just is something, it's in general challenging period, but then when it's over, it's great. And maybe you can celebrate and enjoy it. But generally when I leap into something, I try to look at it as a positive thing, and I don't think of it as a challenge. I think it's like going to be an adventure and a journey. I'm going to, you know, have fun, and particularly have fun putting together a story and a film. That sort of excites me to kind of see it all come together. If I fall into dark thoughts, I think it's not healthy. I'm reminded because we did a series on screenwriters when nobody talked to screenwriters back then. And William Goldman was one of the most interesting of the 6. And I remember asking him this question, well, when you get a writer's block, what do you do? And he says, I don't want to answer that question. I don't, it's clear he doesn't ask himself those questions, those sort of, showstoppers, because it gets in the way of what's working. So when you say what's most challenging, let me think. Well, money raising is the most challenging if you want to think about it. It's always the budget. That's a reality, which isn't very fun to talk about, but that's a necessary part of being an independent filmmaker. And so you love it when, you know, Geraldine and, you know, and Regina and Barbara Dock and Sandra Lee come say, you know, we love this story subject. Would you go run with it? That makes it easier. Okay. But you know, you hear filmmakers do have the reality of you know, the budget, and
right. And
saving your,
yeah. Let's look at the other side of that. And so when you think of your projects, what special moments come to mind, like that are just really treasured moments?
Treasured moments. Let's see. When it plays at a festival, you think, oh, I'm here, but then the festivals are exhausting as well. No, it's great to have an audience react to your work, and you get letters and, you know, comments, but you feel that it's helpful, and what are the moments, the aha ones? But they're all like fun, and there's been moments, and I don't tend to look back. I tend to go forward, you know? And when these retrospectives happen, I go, oh my gosh, you know, then some things come up. Are people watching? Do they care? And all those things, you know. But you know, it's actually, you know, like when you run into somebody who said, oh, I saw Maya Lin when I was in junior high. I remember I was filming the Anita, and this graduate student came up to me and said, oh, I saw that film on Maya when I was in junior high, and it was seminal the way she talked about it. I go, oh, that was nice. Yeah. So that happens, and you know, it's sort of unexpected times, things happen like that.
Yeah, another question that we've gotten from the audience is, Graziella Daniele says, such amazing people you made us fall in love with, thanks to your beautiful work. Any one of them that lingers in your affection?
Well, they're like your children, right? You don't decide. No, I like them all in the sense that I'm happy they were done and they're finished and the audiences enjoy them, and I'm glad it's there. And I guess, you know, it's there forever. Film is there forever. And hopefully that audiences in next generation, future times. But it's usually, I like, you know, they're all actually, they're all terrific. How's that?
I know
the one who asked you the question, does anyone stand out for her? You know, I don't know, you know. Are there any favorites?
Yeah. That's always tough. I always hate that too when programming a festival, people ask, well, what's your favorite? They're all my children. I can't pick favorites.
But you have to do triage. You have to do triage, okay? I don't have to say that. Yeah.
Do you have, or I don't know if I should ask this or not, maybe it's a secret, but do you have any other projects that you're itching to get at that you'd like to produce at this point?
Yes, actually, under COVID, something came to mind, and it's very much, it's too early for me to talk about it, but it's very much happening, and I'm just trying to figure out under what conditions I can film. It's back east, I have to get on a plane and all those issues, but I have the crew on alert that you can film under certain conditions, But I'm very excited about this project. It sort of relates to what I did with Anita and Justice Ginsburg. It's about a woman, I don't know. It just happens that I'm drawn to this story. But it deals with it combines many of the themes I've been doing, which deal with soldiers. I realized, oh my gosh, I've got a body of work that has focused on soldiers and veterans, starting with Anita, and then this Return with Honor, and then I did Lieutenant Watada. I go, oh my gosh, I've got a number of these, but also deals with women and other issues. So I will be sure that you know about it once it's
fantastic.
And it's going to be part of a series. It's a part of a series. I mean, it's standalone, but it's also part of a series.
Great. So I just want to say thank you so much for being here, being on the hot seat. I hope it wasn't too hot. And thank you all out there in cyberspace for joining us, and to all our sponsors and donors. I'm just so very grateful for all of you for helping us keep DocLands alive this year. And I do hope you managed to take in many of the films. You've got a whole more week to watch films until October 18th. We owe so much to documentary filmmakers. And as I often say, everything I know I've learned through documentaries. So please keep that information coming. And if you haven't already, I wholeheartedly suggest you watch our special preview screening of Freida's recent film, RUTH, Justice Ginsburg in Her Own Words, which she did complete to coincide with Justice Ginsburg's 25th year on the Supreme Court. And the film during DocLands has been generously supported by Teresa Wolf. Thank you to Teresa. Now, I'd like to close with the RUTH trailer, as well as, and you sent this to me just the other day, Freida, and it was just so uplifting. The trailer from your recently completed film, The Choir and the Conductor. And I just thought we really have to show this trailer because it just is so joyous. And I mean,
I'm glad you are. It's been wonderful to meet you on this project, on DocLands. And Joni, I said, the way you manage people and platforms and policies is a wonder, and with such good cheer, and it's all worked out. And your staff has been fantastic. So thank you to this incredible DocLands MVFF staff. It's been really a venture in virtual festival, and I think you've got the gold standard from my perspective. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. So yes, we'll close with those two trailers and take in some of those films, folks. Get to see RUTH. It's such an amazing, worthwhile film. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Is it hard to become a Supreme Court justice because you're a woman?
I did very well in law school. It was not possible to do much better. There was not a single law firm in the whole city of New York that would invite me to come even for an interview. I suspected that the door was closed because of my sex. So the barriers were there. In those days, I had 3 strikes against me. One is I was Jewish. Another, I was a woman. And then the one that I think really did me in was I had a 4-year-old daughter.
Ruth spent the next 10 years just blasting the door open.
Women traditionally were deemed lesser citizens.
That wouldn't concern Mr. Duran, would it?
Mr. Duran has a right to a jury reasonably representative of the community.
Without that kind of skill set, everything that life threw at her, we may not have her on the Supreme Court today.
It is very difficult to know where I would be right now if it wasn't for Justice Ginsburg and her opinion.
If women are to be leaders in life and in the military, then men have got to become accustomed to taking commands from women. And men won't become accustomed to that if women aren't let in.
She's experienced enormous sadness in her life. She's lived through backlashes to her life's work. We're in the middle of a backlash right now.
I strongly dissent from today's opinion.
What is going on that she has become this cult figure now?
She just is who she is. She's very confident, very aware of herself.
Recognizing that this is probably the last time that the American people will ever have a chance to glimpse you as a person and what you would like them to think most of all when they think of you.
Together, every choir that has different members has its own unique sound. So let's build our sound.
My mom found out about this choir before I was actually born.
It's where I found my best friends. It's where I found my real love for melodies and harmonies. I just feel like anybody who has even the slightest interest should get into a choir.
You just see them flip a switch when they have a performance or a rehearsal. I wasn't like that when I was 13.
Part of our goal is to be ambassadors for our city and for our country as well.
The same tour feeling is back. It's a very specific feeling that you get when you go on tour.
Clouds hide the sun. Rain comes down and the rivers run.
It's more about giving the audience a performance, trying to connect people through a song rather than we need to win gold, we need to be first.
When I was in school, there were no women conducting orchestras. I remember thinking, well, I don't know if I'd be any good at it, but I'll give it a whirl.
I don't think that many conductors work in such detail as she does.
So a little further back in the mouth and very precise. The people I think who conduct children most brilliantly are the people who look at music through a young person's way of thinking.
The slightest movement of her hands, you can just feel that switch of emotion. There's never been one conductor that had that connection with us. She often tells us that we are going to change the world someday.